Most animals fit somewhere on the tree of life. A place for the worms, a place for the fish, a place for the insects. Even the strangest creatures usually leave behind enough clues for us to say, "Ah, you belong here." But every so often, evolution leaves behind something that breaks the rules. A fossil so bizarre, so utterly wrong, that it refuses to fit anywhere. And it sits there for decades, mocking every attempt to explain it. The most famous of these? A creature dug out of the coal mines of Illinois. It had the body of a squid, the eyes of a hammerhead shark, and a long trunk ending in a claw, like someone designed an animal by playing Mad Libs with body parts. Scientists have argued about it for over 60 years. Worm, fish, mollusk, something else entirely? Even with modern scans and lasers, the mystery only gets deeper. This is the Tully Monster, a fossil so strange it became Illinois' state mascot, and one of the greatest inside jokes in paleontology. It started with a guy named Francis Tully, a pipe fitter from Illinois who spent his weekends poking around abandoned coal mines looking for fossils. The kind of hobby where most people come home with fern imprints or trilobites, not nightmares. But in 1958, Tully split open a slab of black shale and found something that looked like it came out of a sketchbook belonging to a very confused child. A flattened imprint of a long, soft body. A rigid bar stretching across the top with two round eyes. And a trunk ending in what looked like a little claw. It didn't match anything. Not fish, not worm, not shellfish. It looked like evolution had been doodling on a napkin during lunch and accidentally made it real. Tully lugged it over to the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, where the curators gathered around like doctors staring at an X-ray that made no sense. Imagine being a scientist who's seen thousands of fossils and then being handed something that looks like a sock puppet designed by Salvador Dalí. So, what do you do when you're completely stumped? You slap a Latin name on it, Tullimonstrum gregarium, the Tully Monster, which only raised more questions, because once you call something a monster, people expect answers. But here's the problem. The Tully Monster didn't have any. It was just sitting there, fossilized, daring anyone to explain it. And over the next 60 years, countless paleontologists would try, and fail, while the Tully Monster kept staring back with those googly eyes, refusing to give up its secrets. The first thing you notice about the Tully Monster is that it looks like it was built by a committee that never met. Every part of its body feels borrowed from some other creature, like evolution raided the clearance bin and said, "Yeah, good enough." The body? A soft, squishy torpedo about 10 to 35 centimeters long, so anywhere from the size of a pencil to the length of a foot-long sandwich. No bones, no shell. Just a fleshy blob that probably flopped around like an overcooked hot dog in the water. The eyes? Not on the head where you'd expect them, but stuck out on a rigid horizontal bar, like a coat hanger jammed through its skull. Imagine if your eyeballs were mounted on a selfie stick across your face. That's the Tully Monster. And then, the pièce de résistance. A long, noodly trunk ending in a tiny claw. Not a mouth, not a beak, a claw. It's like nature started building an elephant, got bored halfway, and then glued the leftovers onto a sea slug. To make matters worse, the fossils are only soft tissue impressions, flattened into rock over millions of years. Which means trying to study the Tully Monster is like trying to figure out what a car looked like, based on the skid marks it left behind. Some paleontologists swear they see structures of a mouth, others see something closer to a feeding tube, and some just admit the obvious. It looks like an arcade claw machine stapled onto a tube sock. No matter how you slice it, the Tully Monster doesn't fit anywhere. A worm's body, a squid's trunk, a fish's eyes. It's Frankenstein's monster, stitched together with body parts that never should have met. And the strangest part? It wasn't rare. Thousands of Tully Monster fossils have been found in the Mazon Creek deposits of Illinois, which means this wasn't a freak accident. It wasn't a one-off mistake. It was successful. It thrived. For millions of years, this evolutionary prank actually worked. When Francis Tully first dropped off his fossil in 1958, scientists did what scientists always do. They argued. And for the next several decades, the arguments never stopped. Early on, the fossil's boneless, squishy body had most paleontologists leaning toward one conclusion: worm. It fit the bill. Worms are weird, soft-bodied, and ancient. You could squint at the Tully Monster and see a leech, or some annelid relative that got too experimental with its design. For years, that was the safe answer. But every so often, a brave soul would stand up at a conference and say, "Wait a second, what if it's not a worm at all? What if it's a fish?" Cue the eye rolls, because calling this floppy, trunk-nosed gremlin a vertebrate seemed outrageous without hard proof. Still, the suggestions stuck. By the 1980s and 1990s, paleontology had fractured into two unofficial camps. Team Worm, who saw a soft-bodied invertebrate. Team Fish, who squinted at the anatomy and thought maybe, just maybe, there was something vertebrate-like hiding in there. Neither side had real evidence, just blurry fossils and creative interpretations. Which meant the debates weren't polite conversations. They were bar fights dressed up as academic conferences. Picture rooms full of paleontologists pointing at smudges on shale slabs, arguing like kids over a cloud shape. "That's a mouth! No, it's a feeding tube. Backbone. Wrinkle in the rock." Decades passed like this. No lasers, no CT scans, just fossils, theories, and egos colliding. By the time the early 2000s rolled around, the Tully Monster had become a sort of academic meme. Everyone had an opinion, nobody had proof, and the fossil kept slipping through their fingers. And that's where the debate sat, unresolved, waiting for the next generation of paleontologists to bring in their fancy new toys. By the 2010s, paleontologists were tired of the endless worm versus fish shouting matches. Decades of arguing hadn't solved anything, so the new generation decided to let technology do the talking. And they had the tools for it. CT scans that could peer inside rock without breaking it, electron microscopes to zoom down to the cellular level, lasers that could map the chemical makeup of a fossil. The thinking was simple. If human eyes couldn't solve the Tully Monster, machines would. At first it seemed like they were right. One team triumphantly announced they'd spotted gill pouches, pigment cells, even a notochord, the stiff rod that would have made the Tully Monster a primitive vertebrate. Headlines blared, "Mystery solved, Tully Monster was a fish." For a brief moment, Illinois school kids had bragging rights. Their state fossil wasn't a blob, it was a jawless cousin of the lamprey. But then came the second round of scans. Another team, same fossils, same tech, completely different results. No clear gills, no definite notochord, just ambiguous shapes that could mean anything or nothing. And suddenly, the mystery was worse than before. Technology hadn't killed the debate. It had given birth to two Tully Monsters, one vertebrate, one invertebrate. Both backed by expensive machines, both supposedly proven. It was like asking two different GPS apps for directions and having one send you to New York and the other to the moon. The Tully Monster wasn't solved. It was trolling us harder than ever. By the 1980s, the Tully Monster wasn't just a scientific headache anymore. It had become a celebrity. Illinois, instead of picking something majestic like a mastodon or a dinosaur, made this googly-eyed swamp gremlin its official state fossil. Other states brag about saber-toothed cats, mammoths, or elegant trilobites. Illinois proudly said, "Ours looks like a sock puppet with a claw stapled to its face." And the people loved it. The Field Museum in Chicago put entire walls of Tully Monster fossils on display. You can buy Tully Monster plushies, Tully Monster t-shirts, even drink Tully Monster beer. It's a marketing dream. Part science, part mystery, and just weird enough to slap on a coffee mug. But behind the plush toys and civic pride, the riddle never went away. Every new final answer paper has been shredded by another. Every confident headline has been followed by another headline that basically says, "Never mind." The Tully Monster has become more than just a fossil. It's a mirror, showing us the limits of science. We can split atoms, land rovers on Mars, and map the human genome. But hand us a squashed fossil from Illinois, and suddenly we're children again, arguing over doodles. And maybe that's why the Tully Monster endures. Because unlike dinosaurs, which we've mostly figured out, or mammoths, which we can clone if we're feeling ambitious, the Tully Monster just sits in its shale slab, smirking, refusing to explain itself. 300 million years later, it's still doing what it always did best, confusing everything that crosses its path. And if fossils could laugh, the Tully Monster would be doubled over right now, googly eyes bulging, arcade claw trunk twitching, watching us argue and knowing we'll probably never figure it out.